How are
Hey,
you
how's it
doing
going?
today?
Yeah, good, thanks.
So, I watched the movie and I read your note about what inspired you to kind of
Oh yeah.
do the research and tell this story. And it was really fascinating because I wondered why it was focused on two women, and then reading in your research that came from your Irish heritage and bled into like the research that you found. How did it come to be though that you focused? Because I don't want to talk about the twist, but the twist at the end was so cool to me because I was just like, oh wow, like I didn't see it going in that direction. So how did you kind
Right.
of map all of those elements in when you were making the film?
Um, I suppose it was part of the overall story, as in the themes that we were trying to explore really were about, human exploitation, and the relationship between that and um colonialism, capitalism, and shamanism, basically, how those kind of all intersect. So that was, when we started developing the story, it was really a kind of a organic process of research, um, that then built the structure around where we were trying to get to at the end, really. I don't know if it's I mean, yeah, maybe it's a bit twisty. I don't actually see it much as a twist so much as a kind of slow reveal.
Yeah.
Because it's all kind of there. The information is kind of there, but it's just you know unfurled across the duration of the story. But yeah, so it's hard to kind of figure out at what point we built the structure, but we knew we wanted to kind of set it up in one way, a bit like a placebo and nocebo, actually reflecting that in the narrative so that your allegiances changed. What you thought was good could be bad, and what you thought was bad could be good. And for there to be kind of a point in the middle where things kind of shift around.
Yeah, and I like how you also play with that with the characters in who we're rooting for in all different like aspects of the story. And I really like how like so much of this is set up and you knew what was going on, especially with Roberta. Like, and it's like all the clues were there, but like to actually see it play out is really
Mm.
fun because it's like, oh right, yeah, I knew this. This is all
Right.
information that I had, and I just like was too invested in figuring out what was happening
All
with
right,
Chris.
good.
Um, but you do have like an outstanding cast because not only is it Eva Green, but Mark Strong's her husband, and it's like just for such a small cast, it's so good. What was the process like finding the actors for each part?
um yeah, I mean, the Ava came on board first. I thought she'd be great as Christine. And she kind of has a strength and fragility, and she's got a really kind of interesting face, and she's very expressive, and she is kind of elusive as well. And so I sent her the script. She read it pretty quickly. She really liked it. We had a call, and so she came on board first, and we kind of helped. She helped develop the script as well towards the sort of last furlong, making the character more hers and that kind of thing. And then Chai, we were looking for quite a while, because I wanted to find an actor from Cebu, the island of Cebu, where we were kind of setting the story, and where Garrett and I had gone a few years previously to do a research trip and all of that. So we did this as a co-production with Epic Media from Manila, and they'd worked with Chai before, and we'd hired a writer from Cebu to help us with all the scenes set there, and all the of Diana's dialogue and all that kind of stuff. So she'd worked with Chai before as well, but we kind of, I don't know, maybe we saw about 10 or 15 people for that role, and Chai just totally nailed it. So then she came on board. Then it was tricky because we had the pandemic was going on, so like it's really hard to kind of bring actors from one country to another and everything. We were supposed to have a kid from Manila come over to Dublin, but we ended up having to cast somebody. She couldn't because of the pandemic. Cast somebody else in London, Soraya, to come over to Dublin, and then bring her over to Manila, and then bring her back to London. And yeah, Billy came. That was another role. It was very difficult. You know, it's casting kids is always really hard. She needs to look like Ava's daughter, but also be a good actor. And but Billy was great, so she came on then, and then I think Mark was the last piece, because I'm pretty sure we're just waiting for him to read and come back. But I'd met Mark Strong because he saw my previous film Vivarium, and he really liked it, and just we had a chat, we had a Zoom, and just a chat in general. So then when this came along, I was like, Mark could be good. So we offered it to Mark, and then yeah, he came on. So that was pretty much the family then set up.
Yeah, and I was going to ask if you filmed this during the pandemic, did that help or take away? Because it's a family and it's so small and contained. So was doing it in a pandemic harder because you couldn't have those moments where they built a relationship, or easier so small?
No, it definitely wasn't easier in any way. It was a pain in the ass. It was it's also a lot of expense comes around all the kind of COVID stuff. You end up spending loads of money that you should be putting into the film. And it's not as much fun like when everyone's wearing masks. You end up having to kind of become very good at identifying people from their eyes. Or like, you know, I took my mask off one day after about a week of shooting, you know, some people were like, "You've got a mustache." You know? So it definitely wasn't easier. It was, but it was. We did have a few days rehearsal with Mark and Ava, and then we rehearsed on the weekends once Chai arrived. I think when Chai arrived, the very first, like she had to do quarantine and all that, and by the time she was out of her quarantine, it was like day one for her. So her first scene was meeting Ava at the door in the scene where she arrives. So yeah, no, it definitely didn't make things easier anyway. It just kind of makes things annoying.
Fair. With a movie like this, it is one that, like, I do think when you're watching it, you're thinking about everything that's going on, and then afterwards you're thinking about everything you just saw. And so what do you hope audiences take away when they get to see Nocebo?
Yeah, I mean, I love that when a film can kind of live in your head afterwards for a while, you know, and the imagery or the symbolism or some of the themes that were explored in the film kind of, you know, still swirl around in your mind, and the next time you're in like a Walmart or something, you're thinking about like all the kind of the facets of our kind of consumerist culture that we live in now. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a kind of poetic beauty to some of the scenes and some of the imagery in the film that hopefully will linger with the audience for a while.
Yeah, and I think it will. I think it's one of those movies that I like. It was filmography, but like I think about her movie Womb with Matt Smith all of the time. And so I was like, this is now another one I would be thinking about all the time. Just for one final question, with this movie and how, like, I think a lot of your stuff from what I remember is it's very thinking in your head. What is something you kind of want to do next?
Yeah, I'm working on a project called Goliath, which is about creating monsters in order to start wars and steal natural resources. So it's a kind of dystopian fable set in the near future, and it's essentially that's what we're getting at. It's about war and stories shaping political agendas.
I can't wait. Thank you so much for talking with me today, and can't wait for everyone to get to see Nocebo.
All right, thanks, Rachel.